Welcome back, grade 5s. This is Unit 8, Lesson 1. This is our last unit in the grade 5 math curriculum, which is exciting. It's not a very difficult unit, in my opinion, and we'll probably be done in around 2 weeks, which means that halfway through May, you will be done all of the math that you need to do for all of grade 5. So we are streets ahead right now. If you are a little bit behind right now, you're still in pretty good shape. You've got about a month and a half to catch up with us, which is a lot of time to get ready for grade 6. If you are on track and you're keeping up with lessons as I post them, we'll have some extra time at the end of the year to do some math, maybe from grade 6, or some different types of math that will put you in basically ahead of where you need to be to go into the next grade. So it should be fun, should be good. But for today, we're talking about translations. Translating not a language, but a shape. So I've got my trusty trapezoid here. And if I want to translate my trapezoid, all I have to do is move it. Imagine putting your finger on the trapezoid and dragging it somewhere else on the grid, and boom, I have translated my trapezoid. That's it. That's very simple. I could move it over here, 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 here. It doesn't really matter. I like to keep it on the grid lines because it will make measuring how far we translate it very easy. But you don't have to. You could put it right in between. You could put it something like that, right? It doesn't matter. As long as I'm just dragging the shape, I'm translating it. I'm going to point out 2 things that are not translations. So if I were to rotate the shape like this, you can see that now it's rotated 90 degrees. That is not a translation. It's a rotation. Or if I were to flip the shape like this, or like this, like as if I'm reflecting it in a mirror, that's not a translation. It's a reflection. Okay? So those are 2 things that aren't translations, but we will talk about them later. Today we're just talking about translations. If I translate this trapezoid from here over to here, how far have I moved it? Now, it's very tempting to say that I moved it 1 square over because that's the distance between them. You can see that there's 1 square in between. However, when we measure a translation, we're going to measure from point to point, meaning we're going to measure from, if I want to pick the bottom right corner, we're going to measure from the bottom right corner to the bottom right corner so that we can see how far that 1 corner has moved, because that's how far the whole shape has moved. This shape hasn't moved over 1 square. If it had, it would look more like this. This shape has moved over 1 square because I moved the whole shape over 1 square. However, measuring from point to point shows that we've actually moved over 4 squares in this case. You can measure from any corner you want to, and it'll be the same distance. Notice I'm using the same arrow. I'm not adjusting the length. It would be the same as if you measured from the center, but measuring from the center is not going to get you as accurate of a measurement because it's harder to find the exact center than it is to find the corner. So we measure from the corners, from point to point, and in this case we moved 4 centimeters or 4 squares over to the right. Now, you notice that sometimes when I was dragging this around, I put it way up here. That's fine. It doesn't have to be just in one direction like this. It can go up and down as well. So if I translate it over to here, how far did I move it? I'm going to draw my arrow from here to here. By the way, the name of this arrow is called the translation arrow. We're talking about translations, and we're using an arrow, and they named it the translation arrow. Very uncreative, but that's what it is. So if you draw your translation arrow from this corner to this corner, because they're both the same corner, that's how far we've moved. However, it's harder to say that I've moved approximately 5 squares or 6 squares diagonally, right? So we don't do that. Instead, we measure how far I moved horizontally and then vertically. So you can draw the arrow like this, that's fine, but you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares to the right and 1, 2, 3 squares up. And that's how you would say, I translated my shape 5 squares to the right, 3 squares up. And if you want, you can even do this with your arrows to show it as 2 separate moves like this. So then you can see quite clearly you moved over 5 squares and up 3 squares. But it's not wrong to draw your translation arrows like this either. You can definitely do that. And it's a little bit quicker, especially if you're not measuring. If you're just drawing the translation arrow, that's a great way to do it. So that's it for this lesson. You can try out the workbook page 118 and 119. That's Unit 8, Lesson 1. I also attached some textbook pages to the lesson, and it's just the same thing. It's a little bit more questions, For those of you that are wanting a bit more of a challenge, that's a good place to look.